For thousands of years, humanity has always looked back at the past to try to understand the lives of our ancient ancestors, people who once inhabited the earth under conditions that today we can barely imagine. However, perhaps no era sparks as much curiosity and fascination as the period when humanity's direct ancestors had to face one of the most brutal environmental challenges in history, the last ice age. As massive ice sheets at the poles continuously expanded, slowly yet unstoppably covering lands that today have become bustling cities and fertile fields, prehistoric human groups were forced to seek shelter within the earth itself. They transformed natural caves into true homes where they not only survived, but also built complex cultures, laying the first foundations for humanity's later civilization. Before we begin, please subscribe to the channel if you love documentaries about this fascinating yet little-known period of history. The Ice Age, known scientifically as the Late Pleistocene epoch, reached its most extreme peak between roughly 25,000 and 18,000 years ago. At that time, the global climate fluctuated violently, completely altering ecosystems across the Earth. Temperatures plummeted to extreme lows, transforming vast regions of Europe, Asia, and North America into barren, icebound landscapes, where only the most adaptable species could survive and thrive. Amidst this seemingly hostile landscape, humans demonstrated an extraordinary capacity for adaptation, a trait that set them apart from all other animals. Caves, which were once merely natural rock hollows that had existed for millions of years, took on an entirely new meaning. They were no longer simple temporary shelters. Instead, they became multifunctional spaces where nearly the entire social, cultural, and spiritual life of prehistoric communities took place. Selecting a suitable cave was by no means a random decision, but the result of a very careful evaluation based on multiple factors that determined the survival of the entire tribe. First and foremost was the orientation of the cave mouth. In the northern hemisphere, south-facing caves received more sunlight throughout the day. This not only provided natural illumination, but also brought precious warmth in an environment where a difference of just a few degrees Celsius could mean the difference between life and death. Besides orientation, the elevation of the cave entrance above the surrounding ground played an extremely crucial role. It determined whether the cave would remain dry during the thaw or become dangerously flooded when the snow began to melt during brief, relatively warm summers. The depth of the cave also posed several factors to consider. Shallow caves had the advantage of better ventilation and were easier to defend against predators. Deep and wide caves, on the other hand, offered more space to divide into distinct areas for sleeping, cooking, tool-making, and conducting rituals. However, venturing too deep into a cave brought countless hazards. Absolute darkness could cause people to lose their way within subterranean mazes. Many dangerous animals also sought refuge in caves. Furthermore, the risk of rockfalls was ever present and could completely block the exit. The earliest cave dwellers quickly developed highly sophisticated methods to organize the space inside. Although archaeological evidence shows many differences among various cultures and geographic regions, researchers still observe many common characteristics. The area near the cave entrance, where natural light could still penetrate during part of the daytime, was typically used for activities requiring abundant light, such as stone tool making, hide processing, food preparation, and observing the external environment. Meanwhile, the central area of the cave was usually where hearths were placed, the heart of all household activities. Fire was not simply a source of heat in a harsh climate. It provided light through winter nights that were almost endlessly long, helped cook food to make it easier to digest, and killed many dangerous pathogens. Fire also helped ward off predators, which possessed a natural fear of flames. At the same time, it served as a gathering place where people told stories, passed down knowledge, and shared experiences, fostering community cohesion. Maintaining a fire throughout the Ice Age, however, was no easy task. Wood still existed in some areas, but it was extremely scarce in the regions most severely affected by glaciation, where ancient forests had been replaced by frigid tundra. As a result, our ancestors learned to use several alternative fuels with remarkable creativity. The bones of giant herbivores, especially mammoths and woolly rhinoceroses, burned for a long time, generating a large and steady amount of heat. Animal fat was carefully preserved to serve as fuel for small lamps used for tasks requiring focused light. Even dried herbivore dung collected from surrounding grasslands was used as fuel when necessary. Smoke from the hearths created another engineering challenge. Unlike modern homes with chimneys and ventilation systems, Caves lacked natural mechanisms to vent toxic gases produced by combustion. For this reason, the placement of hearths was calculated very carefully. Prehistoric humans observed that smoke usually accumulated in the highest parts of the cave before escaping. Thus, they prioritized building fires in locations with good natural air circulation, avoiding spots where smoke would become trapped and pose a hazard to the respiratory system. Over time, some communities constructed secondary structures within the caves. They used cured animal hides, long bones as support posts, and boulders as anchor points to create interior partition walls. These structures not only provided greater privacy for individual families, but also served as additional insulation layers, trapping heat from the hearth and blocking cold drafts from rushing in from outside. The floors of inhabited caves were rarely left in their natural state. Archaeological excavations show that multiple layers of organic and inorganic materials were intentionally spread by prehistoric humans to improve comfort and hygiene. Animal skins, dry grass, small twigs, and moss created soft beds that retained heat well. These beddings were replaced regularly. Old materials were discarded and substituted with fresh, clean ones. This very process has allowed modern archaeologists to reconstruct occupational timelines by analyzing sediment layers within the caves. Daily life in caves primarily followed the natural cycle of light and darkness, though this cycle was significantly influenced by geographic location in far northern regions. In winter, far to the north, near total darkness enveloped the land almost all day, broken only by brief moments of dim twilight. Conversely, the brief summers featured endless days where the sun barely dipped below the horizon. These extreme shifts profoundly affected the daily rhythm, social behavior, and likely the collective psychology of prehistoric communities. Each morning, when sufficient natural light appeared, tribe members typically began by scouting the surrounding area. Some left the cave to track animals, both to spot potential prey and to guard against danger. Others went to inspect traps set along paths frequently used by wildlife. Meanwhile, those who remained in the cave rekindled the hearth using glowing embers carefully preserved beneath a layer of ash overnight. This technique saved considerable effort compared to creating fire anew every day through friction or striking stones. The search for food was always the primary concern of every prehistoric community. Contrary to the popular image of our ancestors as exclusive hunters of megafauna, their actual lives were far more complex and refined. While they did hunt mammoths, steppe bison, reindeer, wild horses, and woolly rhinoceroses, successful hunts of this scale occurred relatively rarely. They required whole-group coordination, meticulous preparation, and acceptance of enormous risks. In contrast, the daily food supply of humans during this era did not rely entirely on big-game hunting. Rather, it rested on a much more diversified survival strategy combining various nutritional sources. Plant foraging was limited by the harsh climate, but it never ceased entirely. Even in the depth of the coldest winter, knowledgeable individuals could locate edible roots buried deep beneath the snow, nutrient-rich lichens clinging to exposed rock faces, the inner bark of certain trees offering fiber and starch, and seeds stored in rodent burrows. These small animals frequently hoarded food for the winter, unwittingly providing a valuable food source for humans. Additionally, hunting small and medium-sized game offered a far more stable and predictable protein supply than megafauna hunts. Arctic hares, ptarmigans, foxes, marmots, and various rodents were frequently caught in cleverly engineered traps or taken down using spears launched with spear throwers, atlatls, an invention that significantly amplified the throwing force of the human arm and improved accuracy. If you have watched this far, what is about to be revealed will truly amaze you. Please subscribe to the channel to discover what comes next, as what you are about to learn is genuinely surprising. Fishing was also a vital food source. In rivers and lakes that did not freeze completely due to underground currents or hot springs, humans could still catch fish throughout the most severe months when other food sources became exceptionally scarce. Food preservation was a critical survival technology that made the difference between temporary abundance and seasonal starvation. The extreme cold of the Ice Age naturally created ideal conditions for preserving meat and fish through natural freezing, an advantage that cave dwellers exploited to the fullest. Portions of harvested meat were stored in dedicated areas inside the cave, where temperatures consistently remained below freezing. This transformed caves into massive natural freezers, capable of keeping food fresh for months on end. Furthermore, they developed drying and smoking techniques to reduce moisture content in food, thereby inhibiting the growth of spoilage microorganisms. Thin strips of meat were hung near hearths so that smoke penetrated deep into the muscle fibers, infusing natural antibacterial compounds inside, while gentle heat accelerated evaporation. The resulting product closely resembled pemmican, a food later used extensively by indigenous tribes of North America. Made from pulverized dried meat mixed with animal fat and occasionally supplemented with dried berries, it formed an extremely energy-dense, compact, portable food that could be stored for very long periods. Tool-making occupied a significant portion of prehistoric daily life and required specialized knowledge carefully handed down from generation to generation. By the Upper Paleolithic, which coincided with the final stage of the Ice Age, stone knapping techniques had reached an exceptionally sophisticated level. Prehistoric artisans mastered complex knapping methods that allowed them to detach long, thin, sharp stone blades from cores of flint, obsidian, and other fine-grained stones. Each tool type was created for a specific purpose, and making them demanded vastly different skill sets. Scrapers with edges ground at precise angles were used for hide processing, removing every trace of remaining flesh and tissue before tanning. Finely thinned and carefully balanced spearheads were attached to wooden or bone shafts using animal sinew combined with natural adhesives made from tree resin and animal fat. Meanwhile, hard, pointed stone chisels, burins, were used to carve bone, antler, and mammoth ivory into sewing needles, fish harpoons, spear throwers, and various ornamental items. However, stone was not the only material used for tool production. Animal bone, antler, and mammoth ivory possessed complementary mechanical properties that made them ideal for numerous other uses. Unlike stone, which fractures easily along stress lines and is nearly impossible to repair once broken, these organic materials could be shaped through gradual abrasion. This allowed prehistoric humans to create smooth curves, precise drilled holes, and finely polished surfaces. In particular, eyed bone sewing needles were considered a monumental technological breakthrough. They enabled humans to tailor form-fitting clothing, a crucial survival factor in Arctic cold. Garments were another essential technology, marking a turning point in humanity's ability to conquer extreme environments. While in temperate or tropical climates, bare skin was sufficient for thermoregulation, during the Ice Age, protecting the body with clothing became an absolute necessity. Cave dwellers developed sophisticated multi-layered garments of remarkable complexity. This design utilized the principle of thermal insulation by trapping air pockets between different layers of material. Animal hides were selected very carefully based on the distinct qualities of each species. Reindeer hide was particularly prized for its lightweight nature and exceptional warmth, owing to its hollow, air-filled hair structure. This hide was commonly used as an outer layer to shield against freezing winds and extreme temperatures. Thick, durable bear hides were suitable for sleeping blankets or extra protective layers. Meanwhile, Arctic hare and Arctic fox furs, with their incredibly soft and warm pelts, were used as inner linings or for garment sections in direct contact with skin. Transforming a fresh pelt into usable material required immense labor and specialized knowledge. First, the hide had to be thoroughly cleaned by scraping away all residual flesh, fat, and connective tissue. Next, the hide was treated through various methods to prevent decay and maintain flexibility. Some communities utilized animal brains, which are rich in fats and lecithin. These substances emulsified into the collagen fibers, keeping them from stiffening upon drying. Other groups used fermented urine, as its ammonia content acted as a natural tanning agent. Finally, the hide was smoked to enhance resistance to insects, mold, and moisture, ensuring clothing remained durable under harsh environmental conditions. Tailoring a complete set of clothing demanded careful calculation and high craftsmanship. Prehistoric artisans created highly efficient cutting patterns that minimized hide waste while ensuring complete body coverage without sacrificing mobility. Seams were stitched using animal sinew, a material that yielded thread of immense strength and tensile durability. The stitches had to be tight enough to block freezing drafts, yet flexible enough to allow smooth movement during hunting and other strenuous physical tasks. Beyond practical utility, clothing held significant social and symbolic meaning. Archaeological evidence shows that even in those ancient times, garments were used to express status, roles, and individual identity within the community. Decorative items made from ivory beads, pierced predator canine teeth, or seashells brought from coastal areas far from their habitats were likely markers of status, personal achievement, or affiliation with a specific group, lineage, or community. The social organization of cave-dwelling communities has been a subject of lively academic debate for decades. Although archaeological evidence offers valuable clues because much of social structure is intangible and leaves no clear physical trace, researchers find it challenging to reconstruct precisely how these communities functioned. However, by combining archaeological data with ethnographic studies of recent hunter-gatherer societies, scientists have constructed plausible models of community life during the Ice Age. Human groups living in caves were likely extended tribal units consisting of roughly 20 to 50 members. This was considered an optimal size, large enough for effective coordination in complex tasks like hunting or defense, yet small enough to maintain genetic diversity and avoid the consequences of inbreeding. These communities did not live in total isolation. They maintained contact networks with other groups through seasonal gatherings, exogamous marriage exchanges, and possibly formal alliances to share access to expansive hunting grounds. Although division of labor was not as rigid as in later civilizations, it was based on physical health, specialized skills, and individual circumstances. Strong, agile, and resilient individuals typically participated in big game hunts, which required endurance and high-risk tolerance. Those with special talents in napping stone or working bone and hides focused on producing tools, weapons, and everyday utensils. Meanwhile, elders, though no longer as physically mobile, possessed an invaluable wealth of experience. They served as keepers of tribal knowledge, instructing the young and offering guidance on important decisions requiring wisdom rather than strength. The role of women in prehistoric societies was long underestimated or misunderstood due to modern biases applied to the past. However, recent archaeological evidence demonstrates that women actively participated in nearly all economic activities of the community. They not only gathered plant food but also hunted small to medium-sized game, manufactured tools, processed hides, and contributed to key decision-making processes for the community. Many female burials have been discovered containing rich grave goods and weapons, indicating that certain women held high status and were deeply respected by their communities. Childcare was not solely the responsibility of biological parents, but a shared duty of the entire community. This collective rearing system provided immense survival benefits for the tribe. If a parent died during a hunt or succumbed to illness, the children were not abandoned. They continued to be nurtured, cared for, and educated by other community members who had formed bonds of affection with them since birth. Education, while lacking formal schools or instructional institutions, took place continuously throughout an individual's growth. From early childhood, children learn through observation, imitation, and gradual participation in age-appropriate tasks. A 5-year-old child could assist in gathering dry firewood or learning to identify edible plants. By age 10, they began crafting simple tools and accompanying adults on foraging trips in the wild. By adolescence, most young people had mastered nearly all the skills required to become fully productive members, contributing to the economic life of the tribe. Healthcare and medical treatment posed monumental challenges in an era long before modern medicine. Nevertheless, cave dwellers accumulated an astonishing amount of empirical knowledge regarding the human body, medicinal plants, and various healing methods. Though limited by modern standards, these achievements were remarkable for their time. Fossil bone analyses reveal numerous instances of severe injuries that had fully healed. This proves that severely injured individuals were carefully tended to by the community over extended periods, enabling them to recover and continue living. Bone fractures were commonly immobilized using crude splints crafted from straight branches, bound tightly with leather strips or animal sinew. Open wounds were cleansed with water and likely treated with natural antiseptics like resin from coniferous trees or honey, two ingredients renowned for their antibacterial properties. Chemical analysis of prehistoric teeth has also detected traces of compounds derived from willow bark. This is the natural precursor to modern aspirin, used for pain relief and reducing inflammation. Despite possessing such impressive knowledge, infant mortality rates remained exceptionally high compared to modern standards. Infections, malnutrition during periods of food scarcity, accidents, and predator attacks claimed the lives of many children before they could reach adulthood. Those who survived the hazards of early childhood had to face a succession of other threats inherent to a punishing lifestyle. They were frequently injured during hunts and suffered from frostbite, hypothermia, and the physical wear and tear resulting from years of high-intensity labor and physical exertion. The average life expectancy of humans during this era, though difficult to determine precisely based solely on fossil skeletons, is estimated by researchers to have been between 25 and 35 years. However, this average figure is somewhat misleading. It was largely pulled down by extremely high infant and child mortality rates. In reality, those who survive childhood and adolescence could easily live for several more decades, reaching ages significantly higher than the statistical average. The discovery of skeletons bearing signs of severe joint degeneration, advanced tooth loss, and other characteristic markers of old age indicates that some individuals during the Ice Age lived into their 50s, 60s, and in rare instances, even reached 70 years of age. The presence of elderly individuals who were no longer capable of labor by purely economic standards poses fascinating questions regarding the moral foundations of these early communities. Rather than abandoning those unable to care for themselves, archaeological evidence shows that prehistoric human groups continued to feed, protect, and care for them, even when doing so meant that the entire community had to share an additional burden on food and resources. This altruistic behavior is clearly demonstrated by archaeologists' discovery of the remains of individuals who suffered severe disabilities or lost their capacity to work, yet lived for many years after their injuries. This could only have occurred through regular care provided by other members. These findings indicate that prehistoric communities developed value systems that prioritized collective solidarity and the common good over immediate personal gain. The spiritual and symbolic aspects of life among cave dwellers are most clearly expressed through the rock paintings decorating the interiors of numerous caves. Contrary to the popular misconception that these were simple decorative drawings or merely records of hunted animals, modern studies have shown that they were deeply meaningful cultural works that fulfilled complex functions in the social life of the communities that created them. The paintings were executed with astonishing technical skill using natural mineral pigments, charcoal, and organic binders. The subject matter primarily depicted familiar animals of the era, such as mammoths, bison, wild horses, woolly rhinoceroses, deer, and many other beasts tied to daily human life. However, the locations of these drawings within caves, their association with unique geological features, and the ritual remains found nearby indicate that their significance extended far beyond mere representations of nature. Many paintings were discovered in chambers located deep within the interior of caves, completely isolated from living areas. Reaching them required navigating narrow, winding, and hazardous passages. This very difficulty of access appears to have been an essential part of the ritual. The journey into these spaces served as a threshold crossing initiation, separating the mundane world from sacred space. Torch marks on rock walls, remaining charcoal deposits from ritual fires, and various other lines of evidence demonstrate that humans returned to these locations repeatedly. They likely visited only at specific times linked to seasonal cycles or significant community events. Alongside animal depictions appear numerous geometric symbols whose meanings remain mysterious to this day. These include straight lines, dots, grids, circles, and various complex abstract patterns. Some researchers suggest they may represent astronomical markings, lunar calendars, territorial maps, or symbolic expressions of how people of that time conceptualized the cosmos. Particularly moving are the hand stencils created using a spray painting technique. The artist placed a hand against the rock wall and blew pigment around it, leaving behind a negative silhouette of their hand. Those handprints are perhaps the most powerful affirmation of a human presence. They seem to send a message to future generations across tens of thousands of years: I was here. Although music and other forms of performing arts were not preserved directly in archaeological sites, they likely played a crucial role in the cultural life of these communities. The discovery of flutes crafted from bird bones, featuring precisely spaced drilled finger holes to produce complete musical scales, proves that ancestors living during the Ice Age possessed a highly developed sense of musical appreciation and a capacity to enjoy the beauty of sound. Constructing these instruments required considerable time and skill. This suggests that music was not a luxurious novelty reserved for rare occasions, but an integral part of daily life. They may have been used in rituals to strengthen community cohesion or simply for entertainment during long, cold winter nights. Language, though leaving no direct traces in the archaeological record, had undoubtedly reached a very high level of development by this period. Transmitting complex manufacturing techniques, coordinating multi-person hunts, and constructing intricate symbolic systems all required sophisticated linguistic abilities. Modern humans living during the Ice Age possessed the complete anatomical apparatus necessary to articulate the full range of sounds characteristic of human speech. At the same time, their cognitive capacity was fundamentally no different from that of humans today. Relationships between different communities also formed an important dimension of Ice Age life. Although each tribe likely possessed a core territory where they held primary hunting and foraging rights, boundaries between communities were neither rigid nor closed. They were relatively fluid and continually overlapped. Seasonal gatherings at designated locations facilitated the exchange of goods, information sharing, and genetic connections between groups, thereby maintaining biodiversity and cultural richness, factors vital to humanity's long-term adaptability. These gatherings served many diverse purposes simultaneously. They provided opportunities to trade local resources for non-local goods, such as seashells brought from distant coasts, high-quality flint, red ochre of unique hues, or pelts from rare animals found only in other regions. They also offered opportunities for young people to find mates outside their native communities, thereby mitigating the risk of prolonged inbreeding and its severe genetic consequences. More importantly, these meetings served as occasions to disseminate technological innovations in toolmaking, share knowledge regarding resources in distant lands, and exchange information about environmental shifts, climate changes, or herd migrations that could affect vast regions, helping multiple communities prepare in advance and increasing their chances of survival in a constantly changing natural environment. However, inter-community relations during this era were not always peaceful. Although evidence of organized warfare during the Upper Paleolithic is relatively rare compared to later historical periods, several discovered skeletons bear traumatic injuries consistent with interpersonal violence. Competition over scarce resources, personal grievances, or territorial disputes could occasionally escalate into violent confrontations. Nevertheless, given the very low population density and vast open territories, humans had little incentive to wage sustained wars. In most cases, avoiding one another or resolving disputes through negotiation proved far more advantageous than initiating open conflict. As time progressed, climatic conditions began to undergo slow yet profound changes. Around 18,000 years ago, the last ice age reached its peak. At that time, massive ice sheets covered vast expanses of the Earth. Sea levels were over 120 meters lower than present-day levels, exposing many continental shelves and creating land bridges connecting territories now separated by oceans. Entire northern Europe lay beneath ice layers kilometers thick, while southern regions formed cold tundra and steppe ecosystems where vast herds of giant herbivores roamed, forming the foundation of the prehistoric hunting economy. Subsequently, the Earth's climate entered a gradual warming phase, a slow yet irreversible process that completely transformed the face of the planet over the following millennia. Glaciers began to melt and retreat, releasing enormous volumes of water that drove ocean levels ever higher, submerging continental shelves that had once linked landmasses. Rising temperatures enabled boreal forests to flourish, gradually replacing the former cold steppes. Meanwhile, the megafauna characteristic of the Ice Age faced mounting pressure. Their habitats shrank due to climate change, while human hunting became increasingly efficient thanks to continuously refined technologies. For communities that had fully adapted to frigid environments over thousands of years, these transformations presented both new opportunities and countless challenges. Many animal species that had served as traditional food sources declined drastically or became extinct, forcing humans to alter their diets and devise new survival strategies. The expansion of forests rendered long-standing methods of hunting large herds across open plains far less effective. However, forest ecosystems also offered fresh food sources, ranging from plant life to forest-dwelling animals. Caves that had once served as indispensable shelters during the height of the Ice Age gradually lost their central role in human life. As temperatures moderated and the climate grew less severe, the advantages of inhabiting natural rock caves diminished, while their limitations became increasingly pronounced. Immobility, increased interior humidity from higher rainfall, difficult access, and confined living spaces meant caves were no longer the optimal choice in a world offering superior alternatives. Gradually, humans began constructing more flexible artificial dwellings. They used timber for main frameworks, mammoth bones as support posts, and animal hides for coverings to build tents or huts near essential resources. These shelters could be easily repaired, expanded, or relocated according to seasonal needs. This transition toward a more flexible residential lifestyle marked a major turning point in humanity's relationship with space and territory. However, Even when no longer used as primary residences, many caves retained immense cultural and spiritual significance. People continued to return to these sites to perform rituals, bury their dead, or create new rock art on cave walls, thereby preserving symbolic connections between living generations and their ancestors. Certain exceptionally sacred caves remained in use for ritual purposes for thousands of years after humans ceased living in them. This reflects the deep spiritual and emotional bonds ancient communities held with these special spaces. The legacy left behind by thousands of years of cave dwelling during the Ice Age extends far beyond that historical period itself. The cultural, technological, and social achievements developed to adapt to harsh natural conditions became the foundation for all subsequent human societies. The ability to actively modify living environments through shelter construction, protective clothing, and fire control liberated humans from climatic constraints that restricted most other animal species. This paved the way for humanity to eventually inhabit nearly every ecosystem on Earth. The complex social structures needed to coordinate group efforts, share specialized knowledge, and maintain exchange networks across vast distances laid the organizational groundwork for the later emergence of agricultural and urban societies. The symbolic systems expressed through cave art, music, personal ornaments, and likely oral traditions, lost to the archaeological record, represent the earliest expressions of a uniquely human capacity, creating meaning, communicating abstract concepts, and preserving cultural knowledge across generations. When looking back across the vast gulf of time separating us from our ancestors who lived in caves during the last ice age, the most striking realization is how much more like us they were than we once thought. Biologically, their brains were identical to those of modern humans. Their fundamental cognitive capabilities were the same ones we use to adapt to our world today. Their emotions, aspirations, fears, and joys would be intimately familiar to any modern human. They loved their children. They grieved the loss of loved ones. They celebrated their successes. They endured hardships and losses. They found beauty, laughter, hope, and meaningful moments even within harsh circumstances that most of us today could scarcely endure. Today, modern archaeology, equipped with increasingly advanced technology, continues to uncover new wonders about the lives of these ancient people. Stable isotope analysis of teeth and bones allows scientists to reconstruct individual diets with extraordinary precision. Ancient DNA extracted from prehistoric human remains enables researchers to determine biological kinship, migration routes, and genetic connections between communities living thousands of kilometers apart. Radiometric dating methods of ever higher precision help build more detailed chronological frameworks than ever before, revealing subtle historical shifts that were previously imperceptible. Yet, countless mysteries remain unresolved. The deepest aspects of prehistoric spiritual life, those that left no enduring physical record, remain almost entirely beyond the direct reach of modern scientific inquiry. We do not know precisely what languages they spoke. We do not know what stories they told one another. We do not know how they believed the world was created. We do not know what they hoped for the future, nor do we know how they viewed their own place in the universe. Scientists can only formulate plausible hypotheses based on indirect evidence and comparisons with recent hunter-gatherer communities. However, the gulf of tens of thousands of years remains an insurmountable boundary for human knowledge. It is precisely this combination of deepening insight and unresolved mystery that makes the study of Ice Age life so fascinating. Each new archaeological discovery helps illuminate another piece of the past while simultaneously raising fresh questions that inspire future generations of researchers to continue the journey of discovery. The caves that sheltered our ancestors for thousands of years still quietly guard countless unrevealed secrets, patiently awaiting the day when humans develop sufficient technology and new perspectives to decode them. Meanwhile, ancient paintings on rock walls continue to gaze silently toward us from the deep recesses of the mountains. They stand as silent witnesses to lives lived fully under circumstances far beyond the imagination of modern humans. Through those works, we no longer see wild, primitive beings struggling merely to survive, but fully realized human beings possessing intellect, emotion, and a rich spiritual life. They face their world with intelligence, courage, a spirit of cooperation, and extraordinary creativity. It was they who left all humanity an invaluable cultural and genetic legacy, shaping modern humans and explaining why we have become who we are today.